Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed lawmakers at the EU Parliament in Brussels earlier. His speech comes just days after the EU's top leadership was in Kyiv. Zelensky will also be addressing EU heads of state later today. This is his second trip out of Ukraine since the war began.
We're defending from the anti-European, the most anti-European force of the modern world. We are defending ourselves, we Ukrainians, on the battlefield together with you.
We can now go across to France 24's Gulliver Cragg standing by in Kyiv. Gulliver, good afternoon to you. How is Zelensky's diplomatic sprint being received at home?
Oh, very well. You know, all Ukrainians, it seems to me, or the overwhelming majority in any case, fully agree with the arguments that Volodymyr Zelensky is putting forward everywhere he goes, first of all in London, then in Paris and now in Brussels, which are essentially that giving Ukraine more weapons faster will actually bring the war to an end quicker, because the Ukrainians are confident that they can win this war, and that once you believe that they can win the war, then it stands to reason that the quicker they get the job done, the less loss of life there will be. I mean, that is a very, very universally acknowledged view, I think, in Ukraine, and the viewpoint also that this is not just about Ukraine, that this is about the international rules-based order, that this is about long-term peace in the world, that Russia needs to be stopped here because Russia may otherwise have designs on the Baltic states or Poland. All of those kinds of arguments are almost unanimously things that people in Ukraine really believe, and I think that people also very much appreciate the way that Zelensky puts them across. He is undeniably a good speaker and a charismatic person, and I think Ukrainians believe that him going and meeting other world leaders in person can have an effect on the decisions that they make. That's not to say that Zelensky overall enjoys universal approval in Ukraine. Far from it. He has come in for increasing amounts of criticism lately for various decisions that have been made, particularly the ongoing confusion about whether or not the Defence Minister Alexei Reznikov is staying in his post after a series of corruption scandals emerged in the Defence Ministry. Whether he's to be blamed for that or not, it seems to be unclear. So although people have reservations about Zelensky in some areas, they nevertheless think that the one thing he's undeniably very good at, and he's proven this over the last 11 and a half months, is persuading Ukraine's Western allies to send weapons.
Gulliver, there's no doubt that Volodymyr Zelensky will be asking the 27 heads of European states for more weapons, potentially even fighter jets. Talk us through what is happening on the front lines that he needs these things to stave off more Russian attacks.
Well, the fighter jets, it's perhaps important to remember, are needed for two purposes, not just to fight off Russian attacks and stage counteroffensives, but also to better protect the Ukrainian skies against the long-range missile attacks that Russia has been subjecting Ukrainian towns and cities far from the front line to for months now, since the 10th of October. But on the front lines, there has been, for many weeks now, a fear that the Russians would try to stage a spring offensive, perhaps before the spring even begins, and that does seem to be happening. It seems to be getting underway. The Ukrainians are now wondering whether or not this is all they can muster, or whether this is just the taste of things to come. But there are now 3 hotspots in the Donbass. Bakhmut, which we've talked about a lot, is still under intense pressure. Ukrainians beginning to admit that they may not be able, some Ukrainian soldiers, I mean, not official spokespeople, but some Ukrainian soldiers beginning to admit that they may not be able to hold Bakhmut. And then 2 other places, Vuhledar, which is to the southwest of Donetsk, the largest city in Donbass, which has been held by the Russian-backed forces since 2014, and Kryvyi, which is also occupied at the moment. Until recently, Ukrainian forces were slowly inching towards Kryvyi with the hopes of retaking it. Now the tide appears to have turned, at least for now. Russians are attacking from Kryvyi in a western and southwestern direction.
Gulliver, thank you very much for that. Gulliver Cragg reporting there for us from Kyiv.